Hey folks, Post here, welcome back to another Pokemon Masters video, and today we're going to go over Alolan Raichu Sync Grid, and Alolan Raichu Sync Grid is, interesting, I guess. So, when you first look at it, it really seems like probably one of the weakest Sync Grids, because when you're looking at, at first glance, what you see is speed, just speed everywhere, right? You got Feel Alolan Breeze MP Refresh. That's a move that gives you +3 speed. You got Last Dash, which once per battle radically raises the user's speed when in a pinch. That's +6 speed. Inertia, the higher the user's speed, the more it powers up sync moves. Speedy Entry raises the user's speed when the Pokemon enters the battle. And what else? It's just like speed everywhere. Everything is speed. Everything on Alolan Raichu's grid is speed, and it makes no sense because why do you want to raise so much speed when your Feel Alolan Breeze gets you +6 speed already without MP Refresh? You don't need MP Refresh, and you get +6 speed because you drastically raise speed when you use it. So that would be the question folks would be asking and would be puzzled by if this was 2 weeks ago. But things have changed, and I actually now start to understand why there's so many different nodes that have to deal with speed on Alolan Raichu's Sync Grid, and that is Battle Villa. Because Battle Villa, one of the most important things about Battle Villa is MP doesn't carry over, HP doesn't carry over, right? So that makes Last Dash, it finally makes sense now, right? So since you can't carry over MP, once you've used all your Feel Alolan Breezes, in the next stage, you could just wait for Last Dash to get your speed increase, and then with that, you could do much more damage with Thunder Shock. You could go Inertia Sync Nuke, sorta, with Inertia and the Sync buffs, right? So you completely change your whole Sync Grid depending on which stage you're facing and what state your Alolan Raichu is in when you are trying to use Alolan Raichu in the Battle Villa. I still think in general it's probably one of the weaker grids, just because a lot of these are really just niche scenario grids, right, for Battle Villa. So anyways, let's get into this. Let's get into some standard grid builds first before we get into some really niche Battle Villa situations, right? So let's go with the most generic builds we could go for, which is Discharge, right? So pick up all the Discharge nodes. And for a Discharge build, there really isn't much else you could do, right? Just pick up, I guess, Discharge nodes. Maybe get a, if you don't have any support, maybe a X special attack MP refresh. Hopefully to get +6 special attack, I guess. Pick up speed as much as you can, because speed is good, always, right? So there's always that. You don't need any of these, Last Dash or whatever. If this is just a standard build, you don't need to increase it because you have already enough with Feel Alolan Breeze. You just need some more base speed, more base special attack, all that stuff, right? And then voila, there you go. That's a pretty standard Discharge build, right? Which is what you will be using Raichu for most of the time in single player mode that is not Battle Villa. Well, I guess you can use the set in Battle Villa as well, right? But this is more so when Alolan Raichu is max HP and you could afford to use Feel Alolan Breezes, right? You're using these and all that, so we don't have to worry too much, right? So moving on, let's talk about a build that revolves around speed and Thunder Shock, because you do have a pretty interesting build with Thunder Shocks, with Thunder Shock ramming speed, which with the more the speed has been raised, the more it powers up moves, right? So that's a pretty interesting set. Let's pick that up first. I personally don't think Thunder Shock move gauge refresh is that big of a deal. It's a 1 gauge move. What are we doing? It's not that big of a deal. It's a 1 gauge move. Unless you could use it for a different Battle Villa build, which we'll go over in a second, I guess, right? But not at the moment. Let's just go through a standard DPS Thunder Shock build. So pick all these up. You pick up Inertia and then the Sync move, maybe, if you want that, right? Just so, because, it's a 1 gauge, you could spam it really easily. You get your Sync move up really quick and get your Sync move, power up your Sync move, then power up more with Inertia, because keep in mind, again, Feel Alolan Breeze, that gets you to +6 speed, so easily you could not only do decent damage with Thundershock on the speed stuff, and then you could also do a lot of damage on your sync move as well with Alolan Raichu. And obviously you probably would want to grab this one over here as well. And then your last few nodes, I guess you just put it into like stats or whatever, right? Or maybe maybe some defensive stats if you want, or just pick up this or defense stuff. Like, I mean, we really don't need speed in this build, just because Thundershock, again, it's a 1 gauge move. Speed is not that big of a deal when you're dealing with a 1 gauge move, so it's just pick up like some defensive stats, maybe special defense plus 10 or whatever, depending on what you're facing, right? So that would be a pretty standard Thundershock power build with like half Thundershock power build, half Sync Nuke build, right? It's definitely not as strong as Mew's or Metagross's or Red's Sync Nukes, but it should be decently powerful as well, right? The biggest advantage here is that you could get it up really, really quickly because you're just spamming one gauge Thundershock, right? So, moving on to another Thundershock build, which I guess is like kind of like pseudo support-ish Thundershock build, right? Kind of, right? So, for Battle Villa, if you really, really are out of supports, this is a super, super weird build that also does some decent damage, right? Just a damage support build with Raichu. You pick up both move gauge refreshes, and the reason being is just because, move gauge refresh, there's 2. You will very, very likely get a move gauge back every time you go for Thundershock. Remember, Thundershock is a 1 gauge move. You could also spam that to get a sync move as well with Raichu, and then you just start picking up all these other stuff, right? Pick up speed, just keep on picking up like speed and stuff, just to increase your side's gauge as much as possible, because again, like this build is like this build is basically a support build that gives you move gauge without using any MP. All you're doing is Thundershocking. That's a 1 gauge move, and hope that both these trigger, and that gives you 2 gauges for 1, right? And that 1 also gets replayed, so it's usually 3 gauges for 1 move, right? Which is a net 2 gauges every time both of these activate. Even if you get 1 activate, a net 1 gauge is not bad. And Alolan Raichu has decent special attack, so you'll be doing an okay amount of damage with that as well, right? So yeah, you get those, and then you get I feel Alolan Breeze MP refresh, just in case you need that, right? Maybe other than picking up more speed, maybe you want to go up there and grab the last dash if needed, right? If you're low on HP, that gets your whole team +6. Well, not your whole team, but Alolan Raichu +6 speed, which again, speed that all goes into like the team's speed bar, right? So you can do that as well, and then the remaining bit of stats you could just throw into, I guess, either defensive stats or maybe like speedy entry if you want that as well. You could put in speedy entry and like take away one of these nodes, right? If you want, which again, that just gives you more speed coming into the game. So this is just like a full like move gauge speed build for Battle Villa, right? Which again doesn't really cost you any MP, just spamming Thundershock to get move gauge back. That's actually, now the more I think about it, that's a really interesting build, right? It's kind of like superior, but obviously without the X attack all and without the tanky part, right? You could use someone else to tank. You could use like a Rotom to tank and use Rotom to get X special attack all, and then for Alolan Raichu, you're just here to spam Thundershock to create move gauges for your whole team, right? So that should be pretty fun. So moving on to a like weird Battle Villa build, right? Like once you're completely out of Feel the Alolan Breeze move gauges, and like your Raichu, like everyone else is dead, and like you just want Raichu to go in there and like get a big hit, right? You just build up to the last dance, get inertia, get your sync move up. Again, you don't have any more Alolan Breezes, right, to use. Pick up actually you don't need to pick up speed entry, just like pick the rest up with just Thundershock. Just spam Thundershock until you're in a pinch, and then judging from the speed of how quickly you get into the pinch, you should also have sync move by then as well. So you get your +6 sync inertia boosted sync move in there. Again, like completely like super niche way of doing things, right? Or maybe if you don't want the extra slight thunder shock damage, you could just go and you want survivability, so you could get your last dash to coincide with your sync move thing, right? Your sync. I guess you could also potentially just grab some more defensive nodes as well, if you want, right? That's not a terrible idea. Or just again, just regularly just build up your thunder shock nodes here. Maybe not that, I guess, since you need that like at the end of the battle when you're in a pinch. So pick up as much as these other nodes as you can, and there you go. Really weird last ditch effort. It's kind of like one of those weird like power reserve builds, like for Pikachu or whatever. Like when your Pikachu's all out of potions and like you don't have any other use for Pikachu, like you just throw Pikachu in there and then like get both power reserves. I think it's what, power reserve 5 and 9, right? Let me check Pikachu. Where's Pikachu? Yeah, 5 and 9. So you get like power reserve like 14. And then just a last ditch effort to do some damage against your opponent, which is kind of hilarious, right? Just pick up what else? I guess down here thunder shock, and we get a hostile environment, get paralysis in there. Just last ditch effort to do some damage before you die with 2 power reserves and paralysis synergy. So anyways, that's me for this one. I don't know, we somehow ended up with Pikachu here, but well, we're just comparing sync grids there. But yeah, anyways, again, that's me for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I'm not a huge fan of I mean, at least I wasn't before, but now that the more I think about it, like this video personally helped me appreciate HAU'S sync grid a bit more. I don't think it's like that as bad as I thought initially, especially again with Viability coming out. There could be a lot of really interesting uses for HAU, right? So, and that's me for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel for some more Pokemon Masters content. I'll see you guys in the next one.